Throughout history, kingdoms have fallen, empires have fallen, tyrants and dictators have come and gone, and come again. Presidents change, administrations change. The Senate, the House, they change. Fads, they come as quick and leave as quickly as they came. Some ideas resurface, recycled, but there is no new thing under the sun. There has always been the poor and the rich, the haves and the have-nots. There has always been slavery of many kinds, over many centuries, in different countries. Discrimination only changes with power. Whoever takes control dictates the new discrimination. Hate has always been, but so has love. As we have followed man, and now woman, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, the only consistency is the inconsistency. People live day by day wondering what will happen today. Good evening and welcome back to the podcast, Everyday Man of God. It's great to have you as always. I appreciate you tuning in. I will always be thankful and grateful, and I will continue to say that. Tonight's podcast, I want to go into politics a little bit. I'm going to talk about war. We're really going to get into the aspect, I guess, to say, the wars, conflicts, the presidents, and financial collapses, and the doctrines of devils. I said before in another video I had done that I'm probably going to get back into some of this. I used to study a long time ago all of this type of stuff, very much into conspiracies, controversies, politics, years and years ago. My father did not teach me how to play ball. He did not teach me how to ride a bike. Although he did teach me, because he knew nothing about sports, he did teach me, however, about the Middle East. I know, strange, huh? I'm a kid and he's teaching me this stuff. He taught me about the Trilateral Committee, the Bergendors. He taught me about the Rothschild, the Vatican. He taught me all of that way before it was cool to even know this stuff. Now everybody on YouTube seems to be an expert in some of this stuff. So I always thought my father to be a strange individual, and he's a little kooky sometimes. Those of you who follow me know that I'm dealing with some issues with him now, and he's going to be living with my wife and I and my children. 1 Timothy chapter 5:8. I'll refer to that. There's others that can be referred to, but I will be taking care of my father. But he taught me all these things going way back. He was almost spot on all the things that happened. And he wasn't a prophet. He wasn't, Nostradamus. But he had two things. He had a love for history, an idea of history, learning history, and even the Bible. He combined those two things as what we should do today, and you can figure out what the next move is. So that has been my basis over the years of looking at history, looking at what happens, and now judging it by the Bible. I shouldn't say judging, maybe not be the right word, but coinciding with the Bible and seeing where things fall and how they happen. No, I'm not saying let's predict the end of the world. I'm getting a little annoyed by people who do this all. It's going to be 2030, 2040, 2050, 2060. Stop. Most of the time, those same people, are not even walking with God each day. They are not following the Bible every day. Now, am I saying to be perfect? No. In Matthew 24, actually, let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 8, it says, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." And I apologize, that's Matthew 24:35. In Isaiah 48, it says, "The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever." That is important to understand. Everything that's going on. We're taking sides. The Republicans, the Democrats. The Republicans better because they care. Democrats care. And it goes back and forth. Only bad things on the Republicans. Only bad things on the Democrats. Well, that is absolutely, unequivocally incorrect. They happen under both. I want to start out by talking about, well, first of all, let's just get the Trump indictment out of the way again. Yes, but the second indictment, whatever, don't care. If you didn't see this coming, I don't know what to tell you. I'm a little surprised that no one sees it coming. He's not the savior, although he will be treated as one and a god in some sense, little g. It's unfortunate that we put all our hopes on one man. So we have one side's happy about it, and one side is sad about it. But we continually keep on following men. We get wrapped up in this continuously. I want to turn, because I'm going to talk first about the conflicts, wars and conflicts. In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12, it says, "There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." So I decided to start from 1824. 1824 was the split of the Republicans and Democrats. You had the Democrat-Republicans, you had this party, Whig party, although the Whig was a little after that still. You had the Jacksonian Democrats, so it goes on and on. I'm not going to go too deep on that. I don't want to bore you too much with that. But I decided to start from the 1824 mark. Ironically, one of the biggest elections we're going into is 2024. It's the 200th anniversary of the 1824 split of the Republicans and Democrats. I find that to be interesting, I guess. Excuse me. If you're into numbers, I guess that would be very interesting to you. I haven't analyzed the numbers or tried to put that together numbers. I don't really do that kind of thing. I'm not saying numbers don't matter. I just don't get into that aspect of things. Other people are more skilled, I guess you could say, in breaking down that stuff. But when it comes to wars of conflict, I just want to start out. I'm going to name a few years for you. From 1824, the wars of conflict. 1827, 1832, 1835, 1836 to 75, 1846 to 48, 1847 to 1855. And you're going to see that some of these things are overlapping because they're different battles or skirmishes. In these time frames, you're talking about the Dakota Indians, the Yavala Indians, and there's different Indian groups in there, then the Mexican Wars and so forth. There are all types of conflicts involved. So my point is they've been under every administration. So, and I want to also point out, since 1824 to 2020, I'm on 2020, I'm just going up to that point, we know the new election, 2024. There's been 19 Republican presidents. There's been 15 Democrat presidents, and 4 that were Whigs. I just want to make sure you understand that, so there's a very equal balance. And every single one of these presidents, every single one, was sitting in office during some type of conflict or war. All right, 1847 to 1855, 1849 to 1924, 1849 to 1866, 1854 to 1861, 1855, 1856. And now you're saying to yourself, wait, those are in the middle or right before. They are. 1857, 1859 to 1861. 1861 to 65, 1861 to 75, 1862. 62, Stephen, that's in the middle of Civil War. That's a Civil War. No, that is, well, yes, that's in the middle of Civil War, but that was actually a different skirmish. So right there you have 16. And since 1862, you've had 71. 71 more. So that's 87. Since 1824, you've had 87 wars or conflicts in this country. under every single president in that time frame. Not one single president was exempt. Republican, Democrat, Whig. Doesn't matter. So we now know that every single one of them sat over. So when you're taking the sides and telling me, oh, the Republicans are going to save us. Oh, the Democrats are the better one. And that's why, there's a sadness of the loss of understanding history. You put history and the Bible together. You use that Bible as your compass. My goodness, you're going to know more than most people could ever dream of. And you're going to have more peace. I don't mean peace in the country. I meant peace. You, your family, you shall have peace. Now let's dive a little bit into the economic collapses. Let's talk about the financial collapses. There have been quite a number of those, haven't there? Let's turn to our Bibles and not Proverbs. I thought it was, no, it's not Proverbs. Psalms 118. Let me get my Bible, King James Bible. If you follow me, you know, King James. The AV 1611. So in Psalms 118, you can hear my pages turning. 118 verses 8 and 9. 8 and 9. Okay, 8. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in men. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidences in princes. And I will say, to substitute princes with presidents and congressmen and representatives and so forth, they're not really there for you. So again, as I said before, I'm starting from 1824. Why am I doing that? Because of the political situation we're in. We're always arguing, even amongst those who are religious, those who call themselves Christians, just like the secular world. Oh, I'm backing this Republican because the Republicans always care. That is not true. That is not true. They do not always care. So we're going to start off from after 1824. There was a panic of 1825. Directly after that, the president was in office. And by the way, there were panics and recessions before 1825. I am only choosing 1824 on because of the difference in when the parties split. Yes, some will say, well, you still have conservative Democrats, and then there were Republicans that leaned. Yes, I understand that too. But stay focused on the fact we have two parties. That's what we're looking at, except for the couple of Whigs. Because, yes, people talk about the copper panic of 1789, 90, something like that. You got the Bank of England that affected us in the late 1700s. But I'm not going into that. So 1825 was a panic. 1836 and 38, there was a recession. 1853, 1854, there was another recession. Just keeps on going down the list, doesn't it? And interesting in that time frame, 53 to 54, it was interest rates. They rose. Sound familiar? Interest rates. Some things never change, do they? Then there was the panic of 1857. Panic of 1857. That had to do with some railroads. I forget. Some American banks were involved in that, and I know that they were planning for an upcoming war, so that went into that situation. And then when you get into the war years, 1860 to 61, there was another recession. That was when they first used the clearinghouse certificates, actually. 1865 to 1867, that, if you study American Civil War, that is the Reconstruction period, or era. You have different names for it. There was a lot of international financial unrest at that time also. 1869 to 1870, still in the aftermath of the Civil War, dealing with that. You had a farmers movement at that time frame. There was a There were several months into, at that point, a financial panic again, I guess you could say. The Panic of 1873, which actually coincided with the Long Depression. Now, the Panic of 1873 and Long Depression, so that was the, let's see, it's a Europe group, I believe it was. I don't remember their name. Then there was the largest bank in the United States. They burst. Just the post-war Civil War bubble just was huge at that point. And then you had the Coinage Act of 1873. But I'm trying not to go too far off, so we'll just start listing these, and I have them written down for you. The Depression of 1882 to 1885. That was a price gouge depression. 1887 to 1888 recession. 1890 to 1891. That coincided with a panic over Britain at that time, or the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it. Panic of 1893. Panic of 1896. Yeah, I'm going through each one of these. 1899, 1900, you had a recession. 1902 to 1904, recession. There was a panic of 1907. Now, let's get to, this is where we want to pause for a moment. Panic of 1907, excuse me for coughing. Panic of 1907. That is the reasoning behind, as I pause to take a sip of my water, Panic of 1907, which was the cause for the Federal Reserve. And I know what you're saying, the Federal Reserve didn't come out until 1913. Correct. But the creation of the Federal Reserve System was because of the Panic of 1907, which I find rather interesting because we've already had a number of panics. If you do your research, you'll find a lot about Andrew Jackson and the second Bank of the United States and the first Bank of the United States with Hamilton and George Washington. Please do your research on that. It's interesting stuff. I'm not covering it all this evening. Then after that, you had the Panic of 1910, 1911. Here's the funny part. So, Panic of 1907 is what they used as the reasoning for. Well, that's a lie, by the way. Yes, they did, but kind of a lie there. The Federal Reserve, if anybody looks into it, they'll find out that this is just about control. They've been trying to do a Federal Reserve type of system for a long time. The Panic of 1910, 1911, like I just mentioned, was lengthy, but it wasn't bad. They consider it one. The national product at that point, the GDP, it was not good, there was a price gouge again there. There was deflation, but anyways, now you have the recession of 1913, 1914. Hold on, you're saying to yourself. Wait, didn't we just create a Federal Reserve Act to take care of these things? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. So good thing we created. Well, now in fairness. 1913, it could be December, October, I don't remember, of that year that it was actually passed. So that was put into play by, Woodrow Wilson was a president then. I'm going to sidetrack slightly here. Woodrow Wilson put that into place. There was several men that got together on what was called the Jekyll Island. I might have mentioned it in my quick video last week. I'm not sure. But it was Jekyll Island, and a couple of Republicans, a couple of Democrats, and a couple of bankers all got together under this little conference, so to speak, at that time to create the Federal Reserve, coming up with that. And most of these men were backed by the Rothschilds. And as you well know, the Rothschilds always have had their hands trying to control money in America, even back pre-Civil War. The Rothschilds are very old. The Rothschilds and the Vatican were extremely heavy in trying to pump money into the Southern Confederacy because they just wanted to get rid of Lincoln, who was opposed at that time to a Federal Reserve type system. So, interesting side note. And yes, you can fact check me, blue check, I think they call it, verify or whatever. Do your research. It's there. Or I'll be bringing it to you again at some point down the road. And what I find funny about this is like, wait, Republicans, see, I knew it, they're the rich people, and a couple of Democrats. But it was introduced in the legislation by two Democrats. A gentleman named Carter Glass and Robert Owen. Carter Glass was actually supported by many Catholic backers. From what I found out, people who backed him and supported him were from the Roman Catholic side of things, and he received over money seized too, which became a controversy at one point. Robert Owen, I didn't really find a lot on him for controversy, so to speak, with Vatican money, but anyways. Where were we? That was 1913, 1914. So now we got a tough time there because we know what's coming next. You're going to have a post-World War I recession. That's because we went into a war. So that one, the assassination of, what was his name? Franz Ferdinand. That led to that. And again, I'm not going to get into who did that and why, and I'm not going down that road at this point because that's a whole other episode. So post-World War I recession, that was in 1918-19. That was hyperinflation. That took place in Europe, so that affected over here, clearly, because we can't do anything on our own over here. We have to keep on doing things over there. And then you had the Depression of 1920 and 1921. So good thing, by the way, that we have the Federal Reserve System because it's been working splendidly. So good thing we're not abolishing it because I'll tell you what, it's such a blessing to have the Federal Reserve System to help us stay out of all these depressions and recessions since that 1907 panic. That would be sarcasm, by the way. 1923 and 1924, you had a recession. 1926, 1927 recession. I know you're saying to yourself, Stephen, you're going to name off every single one. Yeah, because I want to hammer this point home. I think people really need to understand this. The Great Depression, we all learn about that in history. We don't learn about all the aspects of why, but we do learn about it. That was 1929 to 1933. Talk about the gold standard and the tariffs and, other things like that. But thankfully, we got out of Depression in 1933. Now we're smooth sailing, except for the recession of 1937 and 1938. Other than that, though, they had to balance the budget after the New Deal because the New Deal spent a lot of money, so we had to worry about that. But then we took care of that, so we're fine now, except for the recession of 1945. But that was a small one because it was, there was a decline in spending. Government wasn't pumping money like they were before because the World War II was over, which is great. So we'll excuse that until we get to the recession of 1949. But that wasn't a big deal. It was only brief. We had to tighten our belts a little bit, but we're fine. And then you get the recession of 1953. All right, so what we got here? 53, remember the Korean War in 52, 51. So, that was an inflationary period. And they had to transfer funds, of course, from the national security, so that was important. And again, the Federal Reserve was really trying to make sure people knew its independence. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, independence? I thought you were in charge of keeping the money straight, so you weren't? So what was going on that whole time? So why do we pay you all that money? Why are you collecting? Why are you in charge of things? But you know what? Maybe now that they've basically reasserted themselves, we'll be fine now. Except until 1958, we had a small recession there. That was a budget issue there. And so then there was the recession of 1960-61. Nobody really talks about that one, but that existed. And then there was the recession of we went 8 years now. Recession of 69 to 1970. But hey, not your fault, not our fault, not the government's fault. It's the Vietnam War. We had to fight a war we didn't belong in. We had to do that. So it's not our fault. Then 1973-75 came around. That was the recession there. There was a stock market crash. That led to stagflation. There was also in that time frame, by the way, the oil crisis by OPEC. Here's a little interesting tidbit about OPEC. I'm sure you've heard of Al Gore, the man who's against oil and so forth and so on. Oh, we need to worry about the environment even though I have a bunch of private planes and I burn that gasoline like crazy and I have all these lights on in my mansion. Well, his father was the president of the OPEC company. Well, how about that? And that's where Al Gore got his money. All right, 1980 had another recession. So that was interesting. Not many people are talking about it anymore. I don't know why it gets overlooked. It's just an odd thing, especially the time frame it was. Remember the gas lines? Well, I don't remember the gas lines. My dad told me about the gas lines. But anyways, 81 to 82, you had another recession. But, hey, it's not our fault. The Iranians. They blame the Iranians. Kind of like they do now with the Russians. Well, it's the Russians' fault that we don't produce oil in our own backyard. And then, of course, you had the 90s. The oil price issues in the 90s. That lasted maybe a year or so. Then the early 2000s. Now, I remember these things very, very clearly. The dot-com bubble. If you're my age, I'm not 40 and I'm not 60. I'll just say that. Dot-com bubble. What a time that was. And all the Enrons and, not just Enron, but all those things going on. What a time that was. And then the September 11th attacks. We all remember, well, most of us should remember where we were at that time. I still do. I still remember a friend of mine at that time calling me up and telling me that World War III was here, we're under attack. Woke me up out of a dead sleep. Then I was glued, like everybody else, I was glued to that television until I had to go to work. And then you had the Great Recession of 2000, 2009, 2007, 2008, 2009. A lot of us know about that, the subprime mortgage rates. The housing bubble was ridiculous. It was such a global finance crisis. But you had to blame all these people like the Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's and bailing out the automobile industries. And, oh, man, it was like, what was it, $700 or $800 billion? Yikes, that was nuts. And I'm not really going to get into the COVID recession nonsense because that was insane. Okay, so now we've looked at the recessions. That's a lot of recessions and depressions. So think about this for a second. From 1824 to 1912, there were 13 financial crises or economic downturns, whatever words these folks want to try to put on it, because they're always trying to put on some sort of spin on this whole thing. So 13 of them. And then after the Federal Reserve takes place, from 1913 to 2001, I'm gonna take out the last two just to make it nice and even. 88 years from 1824 to 1912, 87 years to 2001, 17. So you had more from 1824 to 1912. You had less, and then you had 17 from 1913 to 2001. 17 financial issues, crisis, recession, depressions. 17, and yet 13 before that. So we can safely sit here and say that the Federal Reserve was a nonsense. And by the way, again, I want to point out, under every single president during that time frame, Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter which one, sat over every recession, depression, conflict, war. So when you tell me that a Republican is better than a Democrat, better for what, better for who, and better for how? See, these people make decisions without God, and they fail. See, when you put men before God, then you have failed. Yeah, it's pretty easy to understand, right? If you're a Bible-believing Christian, you get it. It's pretty easy to figure this one out. I truly do believe, I really do, as the Bible says, trust in God, have faith, because all will be well. There's an old song that says, keep your eyes on Jesus. I know it's a bluegrass song too, or a folk song. Is it bluegrass? I think it would be considered bluegrass and down south. Yeah, it is that simple, by the way. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Oh, it's not that simple. No, it's all these men who've made it complicated. All these theologians, these real ones that went to school, and these fake ones who didn't go to school, and those who want to be theologians or play themselves out to have some sort of knowledge. They make it more complicated than it actually is. They really do. False teachers have doctrines of devils, as well as men and women in government, or banking, housing, and big pharma. They all have their own doctrines, and they're of the devil. And you say, wait, doctrine's just for religion? No, it is not. You can go to different, you can go to Merriam-Webster, you can go to 1828, you can go to Cambridge, Cambridge Dictionary. Was it Oxford, Cambridge? Or there's a Cambridge one. It'll tell you the same thing. Interestingly enough, the two top definitions for doctrine are both has to do with religion. Wait, Stephen, aren't you a religion? No, I am not. Religion and government. Think about that for a moment. Religion and government. So let's just kind of sum this up a little bit, if we can. Every recession, every depression, every war, and every conflict has been sat over by every president, Republican or Democrat. Not a single one gets out scot-free. Because a lot of us think about wars, like big deals, like these huge big wars. And they minimize, the people who are killed and died under just smaller conflicts. So when you tell me that we need to support Donald Trump, we need to support Ron DeSantis, now I would be considered a conservative because I'm a Christian. I'm a born-again Christian, so I'm automatically put into that category of voting for Donald Trump. When you start thinking this way, you have idolized these men because you are still missing the point. And someone will argue with me and goes, well, what are we supposed to do? We got to get the right person in there and we got to fix things. Have they been fixed? Have they really, really been fixed? And I'm just going from 1824. I'm not going back further than that. I think there was another 10 or 11 recession depressions even before that. If every Republican and every Democrat was part of the problem, why do you keep being concerned about who's president? The only one I'm following is Christ. The only book I live my life by is not just the Constitution, but the Bible. So, when we get ourselves trapped into this vortex of who we need to vote for president, you have failed to recognize that without God, it doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter. Or we won't eat, we'll have a recession, we'll have a depression. Do you not have faith in God? Do you not trust God? You live your day. Every day God will protect you. And when I say that, I don't mean He's going to make sure you don't get a cut on your finger, or you don't get a cold, you don't get sniffles and maybe an allergy, hay fever or whatever it may be. You will go through struggles. Take no need for what you wear tomorrow. Take no care for what you eat tomorrow. God will provide these things, but you must live for God. You must live every day as the Bible tells you to. You do not pick what you want to do like a buffet table and pick and choose what you think is worth it. Because I don't care what you think is worth it, neither does the Bible. You do it all. Okay, maybe I'm getting angry and harsh, some people say. But at what point do you understand, and this is just a small amount of data, that no Republican and no Democrat has ever really saved us? There is only one who can. So I appreciate your time tonight. I thought I'd take a different approach tonight with some stuff, especially with the whole Trump indictment thing going on and all this other stuff, Biden, and oh, now what's going to happen. And I have trust in God. You pray, you trust, you have faith, and God will lead you to where you need to be. Making sure Trump doesn't get in, or Trump gets in. I know all the Pentecostal Protestant Catholics need Trump in. I get it. You're dying for him to get there. But meanwhile, you've forgotten God. No, I haven't. You preach more about Trump and all the politic nonsense than you do about God. Leave politics outside of your church pews, and you'll be all right. God bless, and good night.